Hey, muy buenas tardes, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchísimas gracias to all for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, and the love you guys share and extend my way. From the heart, muchas gracias. And before I get into the story at hand, do please like, share, and subscribe. I would also put an update on current things here in the hospital at the end of the video. Well, today I want to talk about the Billy Kenny from Ontario Black Angels. This is about the seventh, eighth time I try to send this to you. I get into 20 minutes and I just have a lot of personal history, or should I say my family, with this individual, right? That to compact it short it's been a challenge. And then when I think I have it, doctors come in or nurses, and I don't want you guys to hear that. I already apologize for all the noise, right? But anyways, I want to circle this episode right here on Kenny and Chango, his right hand man, right? And when I had the very first crossing with the Pili Kenny and Chango was when I went down to Sinaloa, and I came back, and well, 4 or 5 months later is when I got arrested and went to YA. So it was '93, right? For those that been hearing my stories, my personal story, I got a lot of family in Escuinapa, Las Cabras, Concordia, Potresillo, all that area, right? But back in '93, it wasn't what it was now. There was no such thing as plazas or, warring on the streets for it, you know. And I accompanied an uncle of mine, right? Because my dad had just been taken out in the plaza in Culiacan, right? So that's why I was down there, period. But anyways, I accompanied my uncle and one of his people, and we went to talk to this individual, right? You know, before I go on, I want to state, in no way, shape, or form am I glorifying this. You guys know it. Nor am I trying to pump myself to be anything. Because first and foremost, I was never nothing. Never was about nothing, right? As far as I know. And I was just a puppet for the cause. Campo, el cause. And whatever it required a campolero to do, that's what I was doing blindly, right? But you guys know I don't glorify it. But I do want to I want to tie everything up together. This actually will tie a lot of things when it comes to my story, right? To where I'm at. Anyways, so we met with these two individuals, right? Off the back, I knew they were gangbangers, but, we're in Culiacan. We ain't on that tip, right? Business overall, right? And again, I'm a pup, right? I'm 13. I don't know nothing. I mean, my dad, grandpa, and everyone taught me the ropes when it came to moving candy, right? So I knew the ins and outs of that. But when it came to our causa, you know, I'll be sincere, I was beyond way behind the years, right? I was more on the game banging trip, right? Anyways, we went there and the vatos introduced themselves as Michoacanos, right? And that they had endless of cheese, requesón. I want to state the name of that upper because you guys know. But that, right? And we, at this time, there was a lot in Culiacan of soda, pills, um, of course, goma, chicharrón, weed. But when it came to, you know, Chichar, I mean cheese, queso, right? Michoacan, hands down, they were the first that had it like that, right? And so, anyways, basically, they wanted to do a deal, right? The deal consisted of splitting Esquinapa and Las Cabras between them. You know, kind of an agreement like, hey, you help me, I help you, you know. I'll stay on this side, you on that one. I'll give you as much queso as you want. You support me with the rest, right? Out here already. So, you know, with my uncle, since it was, again, it came all from Michoacan, right? Mostly. He agreed with it, right? And again, there was none of that plaza trip, kind of. So they split, right? Kenny had from the Arroyo up, downtown, well, you know, Besquinapo and Cabras was the families. So, you know, of course, I introduced myself, you know, hey, I'm Robert. And again, it was business, so we didn't, they introduced themselves as Michoacanos, right? From LF, you know, La Familia. So we left it at that, you know. I left, went back to the ranch after that, you know. We did some things for my jefe and I split back to the States. Like I said, you know, I got busted. Went to YA, so started getting more hip when it came to, you know, when it came to Billy's and the rules and regulations, even though they're not applied in YA, you still have a lot of homies with black lecha, right? So I hit the streets, and when I hit the streets, Guero and Moscow already out there, as I told before, and I got a phone call, right? And when I got this phone call, it's basically my uncle telling me to receive an individual that I already knew, right, without putting him on the line, that was gonna go up there and to take him to a family's ranch out there in the Bay Area, and he was looking for some dulce, right, some requesón, and well, you guys get what I'm trying to say, and basically just to receive him, take him to a ranch, make sure everything goes smooth. He takes what agreed on and everything, and he parts ways, right? So, you know, I did it. So, again, I was more on the streets. I was game banging neighborhood wise, but it was when it came to other things, you know, it was I try to, or I was requested a lot of my family to support at least on that side of the border, right? When it came to the area, and the dude that pulled up was Chango. Uh, yeah, Chango. And of course, you know, we knew each other. He asked me about some age. So, you know, by this time he sees me, and so we're alone, right? I'm taking him to the ranch, so we have time to, you know, you game bang, all that, you know, respectful type of thing. And I told him neighborhood, everything, and told me who he was, where from, and I already knew camaradas from Ontario, hey, so I told him, you know, a typical type of thing, conversations. So he told me who Kenny was. So, you know, of course, I was a young buck, right? So I sat back in the seat and was like, man, you know, you start dwelling if you're respectful and all. And I asked, you know, why you guys present yourself as Michoacanos? Because that's where Kenny's power's at, right? Out there with Michoacan, working side to side with La Familia, not for them. Listen to that, you know. And we went to the ranch. Never he picked up his where he was there for. I parted ways, and I told him, look, when it comes to this and the business you got going on with the family, I can't say nothing, right? Because it's not my business. But if you need anything when it comes to homie wise, aquí estoy dispuesto, right? Como venga, let the señor know. that I'm here. And it was cool. It was understood, And right before I got busted, that's when I had my uncle go up there to do something, right? And basically told him, and they had pulled out of Esquinapa. They've been forced out, to be sincere. They started that trip, right? By this time, it was the beginning of '96 or something like that. So they started being a lot of that set trip, you know. So he had that whole area eventually became his, but then they pushed him out, right? Because it's in the border of Durango, Nayarit, XX. It's important, right? So he got pushed back out to Michoacan, you know. So I left it alone. But it's something that stood with me, right? So when the time came, you guys know I went to San Quentin. My first celly, that old man Raul was the main member. So at one of those times when he skilled me clecha, right? I want to make clear not once did he speak ill about his brothers, right? He gave me aventaba ganchos through hooks, right? For me to get. But not once would he do that, he's old school, he thinks differently. But of course, I brought it up to him about Kenny, and they're Billy's from the IE, so they're gonna know each other, right? So he basically told me he had love for him. He had a lot of power when it came to the IE Imperial, but most of all when it came to Mexico, right? And but he did not like who he surrounded his businesses with. So I asked him what he meant, and he said he had two soldados that basically they weren't good. They were trash, power hungry trash, using Kenny's name, and he would co-sign it because they were beneficial for him, and it's just something that should not be allowed, right? Again, Raul had a different mentality that it's rare to see now. But I asked who they were. He didn't want to tell me their name, right? Because again, it would be like speaking ill, right, about his cousin. So he went his way, I went mine. Within time, you guys know I went to Ironwood, right? I took there for Terco, and we had close relationships when it came to Chacawala. At that time, I was a level two, right? But it was because there was back and forth. Either they picked up points, came to Ironwood, or they lowered points and went out there. So it was kind of beneficial, right? At least they were so close together to where you had work go up there. You might tag team, right, in that aspect. But that yard belonged to Kenny and Sherm, you know. And at this time, I didn't know how close they were. I just knew that it belonged to both of them, right? And I found out basically because through Terco, I got requested if I could tie something together, right? So I did. I did what I always do, I'm not a dummy, like I said, I was in that since kids, so I told him, I plug them up, they meet. The first deal, they get their holiday, they get paid, and after that, straight up tell both their sides. From here out, that's you, I don't want no feria, I don't want nothing out of this, because I know them ricochets are strong, right? So I back out, and you know, like I said, I was never nobody or about nothing. But that's the main reason why I think a lot of Phillies allow me to tap in with them, because I was able to provide, and it had to do outside of prison drama. You get what I'm saying? Or running a neighborhood, which, to be sincere, I stood in that. That's what I wanted. That's what I did. Como viniera. However it came, I would support a Philly with a yard. If a repercussion came, I would buck up and take it, or however, right? Because that was my cost. But when it came to that plug, I know it's my family. At one time, I was there with my jefe, right, deals, but at this time I already knew, you know, how things usually backfire, and the Phillies are gonna wash their hands, and everything buddy in between are gonna get it. It's just how it goes. But anyways, little by little, things started happening. For example, there was complaints in Chacawala that the material getting there was soft, was not good, you know. And again, it was a joint thing we were doing, right. So that same material was hitting Ironwood, and in Ironwood, everybody was saying it was bomb, right? With 150, with a 50, 3, 4 dudes would feel the head change, So it just wouldn't click, right? And of course, when this was being told to me, I had to answer. I didn't want to be involved in that, but I had to answer, to the proper channels. So afterwards, little things started surfacing, like for example, Chango. There was different races taking off on homies over there, and even though it's a 2 yard, you took responsibility. You gotta run stuff right? Which was strange to me because everywhere Sherm had, he was real strict, right? But anyways, Chango would let it go. He basically tell everybody, hey, if you do something to shut the yard down, I got something coming. It's a Billy's money. I'm gonna have you whack and remove, which he did a couple times. The most noticeable one was with the homie from Malitos and a homie from his own city, from Black Angels. I think he was like Angelito Negro, right? But anyways, you know, I I I'm not gonna say I push, but I was asking, right? But I would finesse it in the wheelers and on my pills, right? Not directly, because again, I met this individual in person, so I know how close he is with that Billy, right? So the one time that I did push the issue a lot was with this individual they call Box from Lomas in SGV. He was over here where I was at, and I went through all the proper channels because he kept playing dumb with his paper, right? Like I said, I got there, I wanted clean slate, I want to see everyone's I'm appeals, right? He kept playing dumb, and he's been on the yard for a couple of years, so time came where somebody ran his name on the streets, and it came out that fool had an R in his jacket. So when I found the sign, it had no buts or ifs, I knew he was a Marcelon, right? Which he had the means to make money and jale, but I had a list. I I put this on palabra, right? I had a list of 10 individuals that were no good. I mean, literally, they were trash. That were on the yard, but Terco shot me where they were untouchable. And he wasn't one of them. Of course, I wasn't okay with it. But again, I was nobody. And I didn't have that backbone, right? Even though I knew it was right to act and dig in a Billy's pocket, because and I know what it would have come, and just being a buck and have him on me like that, right? Because the program, GP, all that meant the world, right? Again, I was a double lifer. Nevertheless, when time I went to the HP, and into HP, as I stated before, upstairs was Toro from Cuca and Creeper from Ontario. Rodriguez Creeper, right? That senor. And I asked Creeper, hey, con todo respeto, have you heard about this individual? I kind of ran little things, and he had nothing but negative to speak about Chango. I guess on the streets, he had one of them charges. So he should have been hit, but for some reason, and not only from Kenny, but also from Tupi, he was being protected, right? which I never understood. But again, you're gaining things for them, which is dope work. The program has no meaning. All that we fight for, we sacrifice, sweat, bleed for, as campoleros, to them it has no meaning. It has a meaning when it's time to regulate on you. But when it benefits them, you know, they're above that. But anyways, I left it alone because I knew once they started mentioning Pilis that were protecting them, I said, man, if I keep pushing Raul, nobody's you know, gonna save me from where I go and it's go time. Nevertheless, from there, things unfolded. I would eventually hit the Bay, right? And in 2006, yeah, I believe it was 2006, is when Kenny, Sherm, and all that, they took Sherm down from the Bay, right? And in the Bay, right before, right? Let me back up, sorry, a little bit. Right before that, Sherm wanted a good amount, but we're talking about a good amount of chicharron, right? So he was splitting it with the Pili Kenny. So basically, it was to get to Ontario and put in Chango's hands. Again, I wasn't okay with it, but you know, so it happened to the dot, right? And it's kind of where it all took off, right? They took Sherm down to the feds. Sherm had so much. I don't know if he lost track that what it was, what, but at the end, it came down from Sherm that Chango had dipped into what was his in that time, right? Sherm knew how much he was supposed to get, and he got shorted, you know. And anyways, he got put on the hit list, right, on site. So I think Kenny at that moment didn't do anything, right? He allowed Sherm to do his thing, and you know, if he would have spoken up for Chango, they were able to cross words. But again, they're buddies in front of each other, but things are unfolded in the back, type of thing. So by this, I ain't gonna lie to you, I was like, wow, I want to make sure it reaches back to Sinaloa, right? Because I knew that he was on the streets for one, but at the same time, I knew that Sinaloa had started producing their own queso, right? They were doing their own thing. They they split away really with all them friendships with La Familia. So, anyways, as time went on, I would end up go to the feds, and in the feds, I ran across a homie. A lot of people will probably know him, Tatu from Eastside Wilmas. And for those that know him, know his names, right? Which I won't put out, but he's blood, And man, what he told me I couldn't believe, right? Again, I pulled away from everything, but he basically told me that when Chango had hit the feds, I think like a year, 2 years before that, was something small that hit Sherm had put out for him was out, but that's when Kenny started pushing back. And he said, Chales, I co-signed that supposedly Sherm got everything he should have gotten. And he was clearing Django, right? Whoever touched him was going to be on Kenny's list. So nobody touched him, as you guys can imagine. But what Kenny did to disguise Chango because he needed him because he went to Mexico with them, right? He knew his in and outs. That was his right hand man, Raul, had one warn me. And he changed his placazo. And tell me if this sounds familiar, right? Instead of Chango, he called. When he got made by Kenny in the feds, he got made by Mono from Ontario Black Angels. So when my primo told me, right, he was like, and where's he at in Mexico? Now at this time, I still had not made that promise to Sana to go to Mexico or nothing, right? So I was like, again, I had already been in the mix of a lot, but the way I seen it is, if I get it, if Kenny's going against Sherm's wishes, who the hell am I, right, to even speak up? So when time I will make them promises to go to Mexico. And for those that have listened, right, one of the Phillies that I was under in Mexico was Mono from Ontario. Or for others that might know him in Ontario on the streets, that's Chango, which he was on the hit list. He has a sex charge, and he got made by a member like Kenny. Nobody's to speak of, or you're gonna get whacked. And not too many people want to speak against Kenny again. For those that ask me, he's one of the heavy hitters. We're talking about heavy, heavy. You know, and till day, he's down here running the program for us. Well, excuse me, for Sureños down in Mexico. He's one of the main Pilis in Mexico right now. Ham, Richie, Olga, Smoke. But the main one was the old man from Ontario, and you guys know. But you see, that's how it works. You see, we tend to follow, sacrifice everything, our family. We sweat, bleed, we go sit down. Like me, I was there for the whole life. It's a lot. Again, I was just one out of a million, right? To basically have an individual tell me, oh, I could have you whack, remove, put in, for whatever reason. I have a splinter in my nail. Oh, it's your fault. Vámonos. But you can't speak on me protecting someone with sex crime that's already on the hit list, that's known to do more harm than good because he was a straight tecato in Chacawal. I mean, yeah, and Chacawala. So, you know, that at that moment was, to be sincere, so an eye opener, but at the same time, it was something that stung. I'll just leave it like that. And you guys know that's why when we hit Becca ransom, when they took him to protect the custody, the Seattle B7, like I stated on that video, I wasn't surprised, because of this history. You see, to this day, Mono, a lot of things happen in Michoacan where Kenny, of course, lost it. Mono couldn't keep it. For example, Kenny's strong partner over there was not the people you hear in the news, but was Octavio Reyes. Those that know, right? And not. But anyways, they call him El Gallo from La Familia. And no, not the new one you hear, of the La Familia Nueva Generación, which is, his son or grandson. I don't know. It's El Gallito, whatever it is. He's his relative, but it's not him. I'm talking about mid 80s, right? At them times. And Tell me, how would you feel to go along the line and do what you're supposed to the dot, but to know someone has an S crime that's no good, that has damage, that causes them, and to not being able to have the when one of the individuals tells you I'm above that, you even speak on it, you're the one that's gonna get stabbed and put on that side, and there's no coming back for you for that. Tell me, what would be your action? But I will continue with this. I'll say I don't want to make it long, everyone. I'll leave this with this. The point I want to make on this is look at things for what they are. You know, I named a couple homies that, due to dope, Chango or Mono, in that prison, that level 2, had whacked and put on the list just so he kept getting high. And to have an individual tells you you ain't nothing, you can't do nothing. So be smart, you know. I say this to say this again. If you're there, my respects. Boot up, suit up, y vámonos. No buts or ifs, right? I'm being ignorant because I was there. I did that exact same thing, and even when I got out. But at least be wise, you know, in the sense of, yeah, do what you have to do for your neighborhood, your friends. But don't get fooled into believing the, the gains that supposedly are going by prison. There's nothing there but that little 2, 3 minutes glory of you get out and the youngsters from your neighborhood looking up at you because you're a pinto, right? Other than that, man, you're gonna have a lot of disappointment. You know, be smart. Don't go in there and just imagine as a double lifer, validated at the time. There was no way out to shoot, but that to sit and dwell on things like this, what would you be your action? Again, if you're not there, at least be smart enough to say, you know what, I got to a certain point where my neighborhood, you know, it's time for me. I'm just not dispuesto today to throw my life away to go bleed and do something for Dolphin to tell me nothing I do means anything but what he says. That's just not a causa. Anyways, I hope I made sense. Again, everyone, this is I don't know how many times this is. I apologize, but I hope I made sense. There will be a second part to this because my blood will come in here, you know. Like I said, Tatu from Eastside Wilmas. I know a lot of people are gonna know who I'm talking about. And I'm gonna tell you the repercussions of what I'm speaking of right now. Again, Mono Tilde or Chango from Ontario. He's a made Mexican male mafia. He got made in the feds, but he says he's the faction from Mexico. And you know, I already stated. Before I go, another reason I couldn't get it out is, man, these doctors came right 9 in the morning, basically told me that you know that investigation surgery they did through my heart in my vein when they told me my heart is all damaged, that to decide is inconclusive. So I was like, what the hell? Can you guys please tell me what is that supposed to mean? Anyways, the fool told me, right? The surgeon told me he would be back by midday with an answer. It would not pass today the answer of what it was, of what was the next step. And look at the time, and he's never come back. So if I'm mad, I actually I broke and bowed down. So I let go of a lot. But also in Culiacan, 9 people went in to donate. Out of those 9 people, 2 people got accepted. I don't know what they want me to do. It's like I don't have the donors. These guys are debating, so all I can do is lay it in my higher power's hand, which in my case is Jesus, right? And stop stressing on it, cause I never come on here and tell you guys exactly how I feel. I know you, everyone knows. I buck up a lot, and when I come on here, that's why I try to make things short, cause I don't want it to flare out. I hate to, and it's not a pride thing; it's a respect thing with you guys. That's why I keep you guys in the loop of everything. But I'm guessing this fool, he comes check on me every morning, so he's waiting till tomorrow to tell me what is what. But I don't have the blood. Anyways, everyone, thank you for hearing me out. Again, I hope I made sense. Do excuse if I sound a little bit, I've been, I'll just, please stay true to yourself and loyal to your loved ones. My love always. Stay blessed.